In the previous video, we looked at how we can use the app group entitlement to share classes between targets. But in this video, we're going to see how we can send data across from one application to another using WCSession. So initially we're going to set up a WC session and activate it. Then we'll send messages between paired devices. And finally, we'll use the data that we get from core data to populate our WK interface table view. In the previous video, we worked with app groups to share functionality of core data across both the iOS application and the watchOS application. In this video, we're going to see how we can use WCSession to share data between the two devices. Let's start off by going to our Dreams table view controller, and we're going to import watch connectivity. This framework allows us to create sessions, which enables us to pass data between both iOS and watchOS. Then, I'm going to create a new variable, and I'm going to call this session, which will be a type of WC session. And when I set this, I'm going to set the delegate as self, and then I'm going to activate the session, which means we'll begin looking for signals. Don't worry about the error on the self at the moment. We'll come back to that. Then, within the view.did.load, I'm going to check whether the session is supported. And if so, then I'm going to set the session to WCSession.defaultSession. Now let's scroll down to the bottom, and I'll create a new method here, which I'm going to call sendMessage. And I'll also extend the Dreams table view controller to implement the WCSession delegate protocol, but I'll leave that blank. Now I'll jump over to Dream. When sending messages between two devices, iOS and watchOS need to have all the data in standard forms, such as dictionaries, arrays, or simple strings. So us sending across objects that we've created just isn't possible. So within Dream, I'm going to create a new method called serialize, and it will return a string anyObject. And this method will be used to take all of the information that we have, the ID, the name, the image link, etc., and send that back as a dictionary. So I'll create a dictionary, which will be a string anyObject, and I'll create it empty for the moment. I'll update each of the properties into the dictionary by doing dict.updateValue. So for ID, I'll set it for ID. For name, I'll set that name for key name. I'll put image link for image link. I'll put the state string down for state, the lat for lat, and the long for long. And then I'll return the dictionary. Now let's go back to our Dreams table view controller. Within here, I'll check to see if there are any results. So I'll put if let results equals fetch results controller dot sections, section at 0 dot objects as an array of dreams, where WCSession is supported. Then I'll create a dreams array, which will be an array of any object, and create that as empty for the moment. And then I'll iterate through my results. So for result, in results, I'll create a dream, which will be the result serialized, and then I'll add it to my array. And then I'll put session.sendMessage, and I'll pass across a dictionary, which I'll use a key as added, and the value as my array. And I'll put nil for the reply handler and nil for the error handler, because we're not using those at the moment. And then because I want this to happen, just after I fetch, I'm going to put sendMessage just after the try for the fetch results controller perform fetch. Okay, so now we want to start receiving the message, and we do that within our extension delegate. So again, let's go import the watch connectivity. And I'll create another variable in here called session, which will be a WC session. And again, I'll put the did set in there. And I'll put if let session equals session, then session delegate equals self, and session dot activate session. And now within the application did finish launching, we'll check again to see whether WC session is supported and set the session as the default session. And then let's scroll to the bottom. And we'll extend this extension delegate by putting extension delegate, WC session delegate. And within here, we're going to make use of the session delegate method, which is session did receive message. And this is where the message is being received from the message we sent previously. So I'll put let core data equals core data manager dot shared manager. And then I'll put if let added equals message added as an array of dictionaries of string anyObject. Then I'll put core data dot create dreams and pass in added. And now within our interface controller, we'll delete our data source. Let's import core data. And then let's create a fetch results controller. So I'll put lazy var fetch results controller ns fetch results controller. Then I'll guard let the managed object context from core data shared manager, and then let bind the dream entity from ns entity description dot entity for name dream and passing in the MOC, otherwise I'll return nil. Then I'll create a fetch request, so let fetch request equals ns fetch result equals ns fetched request. So let fetch request equals ns fetch request, and I'll set the fetch request entity as the entity dream, and I'll set the sort descriptors as ns sort descriptor with the key name and ascending true. And then I'll create a controller, which will be an ns fetch results controller, using the fetch request and the manage object context, with both the section key path as nil and the cache name as nil. And I'll set the controller delegate as self, and I'll return the controller. Then within the await with context, I'm going to try for the fetch results controller to perform a fetch, and then I'll reload the data. I'll put an empty catch around it, and delete that final reload data. And let's scroll down to our reload data method. Here, what I actually wanted to be is the number of items within the fetch request. So I'll put if let objects fetch results controller dot sections 0 dot objects as an array of dreams, so that within the table view dot set rows we can put objects dot count. And then instead of the data source, we can enumerate through the objects. And we'll put the dream dot name as the label text. I'll just quickly copy and paste that to get my alignment. And then I'll create another extension for the interface controller, which will extend ns fetch results controller delegate. And in here, we'll use the delegate method controller did change content. And when this happens, we'll reload the data. Now, I'm just going to quickly build and run my original app. And then I'll build and run the watch app. As you can see, we now have all the data coming through. For further information about watch connectivity, please check out these links, as well as the video from WWDC 2015 on watch connectivity. And now we have the data coming through into our core data on our watch app. In the next video, we're going to look at how we can navigate through the application using segues and contexts.